Dr. Ron Posno was a teacher, a pilot, and a motivational speaker. He loved scuba diving, and he was an RV enthusiast. He writes novels for fun, although they do remain unpublished. Ron says most of everything he learned that was worthwhile, he learned in the RCAF or as a teacher in the public school system. Well, he is still teaching all of us. He is 81 years old and has been diagnosed with MCI, mild cognitive impairment. It's a precursor for dementia or Alzheimer's, one of the 13 forms of the disease. He has become an advocate for MAID, medical assistance in dying. I want an assisted death, he says, and until then, I want the peace that comes from the assurance it will be provided when I need it or want it. Ron and his wife, Sandy, his high school sweetheart, live in London, Ontario. And Ron, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, I'm very pleased to be able to join you.
It's just great.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself here. 5,800 hours of flying with the RCAF. What was your job primarily?
Well, when I did all that flying, I was no longer in the RCAF.
What, did you sneak a plane home or what?
No, I didn't. I got out of military college and then became a public school teacher.
Amazing.
And between my wife and myself and a variety of other adventures, including 3 years living in Europe, teaching Department of Defense school kids, I continued with private flying. So I ended up with 5,800 hours. I was fully rated instrument pilot, twin engine pilot. I've flown all over North America, up past the Arctic Circle, down in the Caribbean to go scuba diving. And fortunately, my wife was able to join me on most of those journeys. So we've lived a very full life.
No, have you ever? And well, my dad was Air Force, so I have my biases. I was honorary colonel there, so I too have gotten to the Arctic Circle, but in a slightly larger plane, probably.
Oh, I had a single engine airplane.
You're crazy. Yeah. All right, Ron, tell us a little bit about what your life is like now. I read that you said that you gave up golf, but it wasn't because of memory issues, that you couldn't remember the score. It's just because your knees are bad.
That's
How
right.
is the MCI affecting your life?
Well, I look at it this way. I have never, ever, and I used to teach this when I was working with people with exceptional needs, whether they're children or whether they were adults. You define yourself by what you are able to accomplish. You do things. So when I was working with very exceptional, needy children, we didn't talk about what you can't do. I've read so many other stories about classifying people on the basis of what they can't do. They can't read, they can't see, they can't walk, they can't do that. That is not what my whole life's been about. My whole program with people is to focus on what you can do. And you start with what you want to do. And you help people, you support people and trying to enable them to accomplish this can do and want to. So when it comes to me, my life was the same thing. I always focused on what I can do. So when I have MCI, and I'm pretty sure it's moving well into Alzheimer's, as it might very well be there, well, a 65% chance would become Alzheimer's. I don't look in terms of what I can't do. It's prevalent. I know I can't do today what I could do a year ago. There are certain things that happen all the time. My short-term memory is practically gone. I can't remember what I had for supper last night, for example.
Yeah.
I have to look back in my little date book to see what I did to help me. Well, you see, that's what you do when you've got special needs. You develop routines so you don't break a routine. You've got backup plans to check on what your life's all about. But I focus, and I say this quite decidedly. I've got 3 ups every morning. 1, I wake up. 2, The sun's up. 3, I get up, and then I get a bonus. I turn around and ask Sandy, my wife, what's up? So, but it's really, I can say, well, yes, I am literally losing my mind. My worry is not that at all. I don't have a worry. I have a real benefit. Sandy and I are enjoying a life together now that we've never had before. And we've had a lot of living to do, over 60 years together.
It sounds like it, and you traveled and you did things together, and you shared a worldview and a life view.
Exactly.
And she is on side with you in terms of your mission now on medical assistance in dying.
Yes. We talked about it. You see, a large part of my concern it's not just me. It's not my problem. It's the people. My wife first.
Right.
You're aware of what happens when you get into that last stage, the end of life stage. I sure do,
because my mother went through this. Yeah,
that's right. And I have no desire at all to drag my wife into that turmoil. We have friends, we have other members of family. I don't want to drag them into that. That's a terrible, and I won't even talk about today with the issues of COVID-19.
Right.
But I'm just talking about it generally. So I have no desire to go there at all. So MAID is a wonderful thing. And I learned from another care provider, a wonderful expression. Just after I was assessed, a year or so afterwards, 2 years maybe, a producer from CBC came to me, Elisa Siegel. She was producing shows for Michael Enright on Sunday morning edition.
Right.
So she spent 2 days with me, with my friends, people we know, interviewing me, and she created the show for Michael Enright, a half-an-hour show. She did a wonderful job, and Michael Enright, as you know, sounds great.
Yeah.
They were taken with my idea of what you've just talking about. I wanted a death, a physician-assisted suicide. Well, from that show going out, I got over 5,000 people coming at me that next week wanting more information. I don't know how they did it because there was no connection information put out on the radio, but they tracked me down and do it. Well, a woman from Windsor got a hold of me, Terry. And she said, we heard your broadcast Sunday morning. And my dad was assessed with Alzheimer's 5 years ago. Since his assessment, he never goes out of the kitchen. He stays home, locked in there. And we listened to your broadcast, and he turned to me and said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that MAID. Well, the bottom line was I had to tell Terry, I'm sorry.
You can't.
It's not available now.
Yeah.
We got to get the law changed. Well, she told her dad. And Dad had about 10 days reprieve there. He went back to his original life. He was a retired car worker. And he had a garage workshop. He liked to restore old motorcycles. He was a neighborhood fix-it guy. People would come down and, hey,
right.
Gus, give me a hand. He'd do that. He'd go down to the boys, have coffee at the Timmy Hortons in the morning or beer at the Legion or whatever. So he was an active man before his diagnosis. His diagnosis terrified him.
Yeah.
But I picked up on this notion of beacon of hope. That was his expression. I got hope. I can get out of this. I don't have to die like that. Well, I told Terry, she told her dad that MAID right now is not available. The next news I got from Terry was a picture of her on the icy shore of the Detroit River. Gus had fired up his motor. He pushed his bike out to the garage, 3 o'clock in the morning, drove down the river and jumped in.
Wow.
So I've since learned, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's a great expression, beacon of hope. I've talked to so many people, not just people with dementia, but other kinds of people with real problems, significant problems. And the idea that they could possibly get MAID is a real beacon of hope. It enables them to put the worry aside and get on with living today and making the best of the day you've got. And that's a wonderful thing to do.
This is the thing that troubles me, and I come to it from a very personal point of view too, which is watching my mother and knowing that she would have opted for MAID if she could have.
Yeah.
But it's the catch-22. This, as soon as you're diagnosed, then they tell you you're no longer competent or capable of making a decision. Where here you are in the middle of life post the diagnosis, and you're perfectly able and capable of making this decision, and nobody will let you.
That's right. And you see, this isn't irony. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing. I'm the same. I tell people, you're the same the day after diagnosis as you were the day before.
Exactly.
And your decline is going to happen. There's no question about that. We don't have a cure for it. But there are all kinds of ways that you can live a good life. And you can choose to do that. But even better, when you know you don't have to go out that terrible back door. So, and it applies to not just people with dementia. I've talked with people with going into stage 4 cancer.
Right.
And they want that relief. They want assurances that they can get that. One of the stories the Dying with Dignity shares with people is the story of Audrey Fisher. And I'm sure you know about Audrey's story.
I know the story. Go ahead, explain a bit.
And you see, she had to take an earlier death because the rules are. And let me sidetrack here a bit, Pamela. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
The Supreme Court's decision, the Carter decision in 2015 was very clear. People facing a future of unendurable pain and agony should be able to access physician-assisted suicide or death or whatever you want to call it. We now call it MAID.
Right.
That term.
And they actually said these cases are unique. You can't just have a category of people with Alzheimer's or people with dementia. That
That's
cases are unique.
Each case has to be made by itself. And they didn't say that because you have mental illness or because you have dementia or because you are physically disabled or whatever, they didn't say you couldn't be eligible. They didn't take anybody out. You are a Canadian and you are entitled to all the rights that we provide. Well, that's what the Supreme Court said. And then it turned around to the government. I won't go through all the stages of that.
And they restricted it and restricted it and restricted it.
And they added all these precautions and safeguards, which don't do anything for the patient.
Right.
They don't do anything for the patient at all. In fact, they create hurdles for the patient. And I don't know who the hell they're safeguarding other than possibly the conscience of some of these moralizers that we have unseen. It's a terrible thing. This whole business of MAID, as it was put out on a year later, 2016, changed from a medical practice to a bureaucratic provision of a warped service. And it was not available to all the people who might need it, who couldn't choose. They took the choice away. So I have real problems with like what I call this bureaucratic service.
What is your theory? Because of course I was in the Senate at that time as well, and we were pushing back and forth with government. This is a relatively young-minded government, et cetera, on all sorts of other issues, environment and this and that. Why do you think there is such incredible resistance to this?
Well, we have spent, we're not just talking generations, we're talking the culture as it has evolved over time. Suicide became legal in Canada some years ago. Now, to assist somebody with suicide is still a crime.
Yeah.
So that's why we had to create MAID, to enable people who might be qualified enough to assist somebody to access suicide. So that's why we had to do it. But for a lot of people, what I call them moralists, conscientious objectors. We've even got professional practitioners that are hooked on an old version of Hippocratic oath. There are all kinds of reasons. Lately I've been taking very much with what you're facing there in the Senate with the number of what you call informed witnesses, people representing crippled people.
Mm-hmm.
Who stand up and make sound cases that you can't do this. This is a terrible thing to do. You've got to take crippled people out of that whole equation. Well, I'm crippled.
Yeah.
I can't see in one eye.
Yeah.
Like my knee doesn't work.
Yeah.
This eye here, my right eye, I'm losing vision in that. So, but that's a minor. I'm not worrying about me. It's other people. I taught a young man once in grade 8, and he had muscular dystrophy. Well, 6 years later, his dad and Jesse was his name, they pushed Jesse across Canada in a wheelchair. This followed Rick Hansen.
Yeah.
This followed Terry Fox. These are all people with serious disability. Now,
who overcame.
Oh, sure they did. And they can overcome. But even if it comes down to it, Rick wants to decide a few years from now that he's tired of all this stuff and he wants medical assistance and dying, he should have the right. We don't have a bunch of moralists preaching around the floor and in the Senate.
Well, this is kind of the point. It's not like you're forcing somebody or I'm forcing somebody to do this. You're saying this should be a question of choice, and we've agreed to that concept in other areas. I mean, there's the obvious one of abortion. That's a whole other set of issues. But I'm not saying everybody with Alzheimer's has to go through this, or everybody who hits the age of 81 has to be forced into this situation. It should be our choice.
Absolutely. You picked on a key factor. And that's what the Supreme Court said in 2015.
Right.
If the law was built exactly on what the Supreme Court said, we wouldn't have the arguments and problems that you've been going through this while. And the whole thing is it's a matter of choice. And as Gus from Windsor said, it would be his beacon of hope.
Yeah.
He could choose to do it. He doesn't have to do it. Nobody's pushing him to do it. I can't ever see doctors or nurses advising somebody, trying to push them into it at all. But I do want doctors and nurses to inform people about the possibility of this choice.
And if they don't want to be involved, to recommend you to someone else, to say, I know Dr. Smith over here does it and Dr. Jones is not interested, so go see Dr. Smith.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And be patient-centered enough to follow up on your reference. Make sure that it actually has taken place. Now, of course, in today's world with COVID, it's become extremely complicated. But the point is, it is a person's right to choose, and it's a doctor's right to provide assistance. And this decision of whether you're going to get involved with MAID should be like any other kind of medical decision. It's a decision between the patient and the doctor, and not some independent witness somewhere else. This is a medical, we have do not resuscitate orders.
That's
all
the
it
other
requires
thing.
is you sitting down with your doctor, discussing the thing and signing the government form. That becomes the rule.
that to me, you see, is the establishment of the principle, and we've all done it who've gone through a surgery. I've done it for family members. For my father, when he was going in for heart surgery, you have that discussion. You sign that. Do not resuscitate me if I have no mental capability, if I have no physical capability, and certainly if I have neither. Do not resuscitate.
That's right.
To me, it is the same principle.
To me, it's the same thing. I don't see anything different, and we don't need to have all. Pam, you've had the direct, immediate experience. I found it interesting. There in February last year, I think it was February, whatever. I don't know. Just recently, the lawyer that fought the case for Sue Rodriguez back in '93, Joe Avery, I think his last name. I've never heard his last name pronounced. Avary, Avery.
Yeah.
Joe supported Sue in her case, where this issue became a big thing. Now, they lost.
Yeah.
But Joe supported Kay Carter in 2015, and they won.
The decision that got us this far. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the key point. When MAID finally came out of the wash tub in 2016, he would not vote for MAID. He could not support it. He said, this is not what the Supreme Court said. Yeah. And he had all kinds of reasons why this was a lousy, terrible bill.
Complicated and messy.
Yeah.
One of the things, I mean, this is an issue for a lot of people. I think the numbers are about 500,000, 500,000 people in this country living with a dementia diagnosis, and it's about 25,000 people every year that are added, right?
Those are the facts from ASC. Now, I will add a bit to that.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous fear in the general population, ignorance, fear, prejudice, whatever you want, but they won't go and get a diagnosis.
Right.
I'm doing workshops all the time, and I'm finding people who won't do that. They don't want to find out. It's like going back 20, 30 years ago, they wouldn't go and get a diagnosis of cancer. They were afraid of it. They were big C. We won't do it. So yeah, there's a little more than 500,000, over 500,000 people we know, but they're diagnosed. I would suggest that don't go. We're 30 or 40% more of our population who don't know and won't find out.
Well, that's also part of this issue, because once you're diagnosed, it's kind of that moment where you are then considered not competent to make a decision because you have this diagnosis. So you're probably going to find more people that are saying, I don't want the diagnosis because I want to be able to make a decision.
Well, I can go back and say that there are a lot of physicians who have a lot different kind of attitude. Are there poor physicians? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we have a college of physicians and surgeons? Yes. They're the ones that set the rules. They're the ones that control the people, the professional people. And one of the things I love, it's been created in the past few years, is the Canadian Association of MAID Assessors and Providers.
Mm-hmm.
It's led by two doctors in Vancouver Island, Stephanie Green and Alan Weeb. They're just wonderful people, and their leadership is terrific. These people know about it. They know about the problems. They know the problems that other physicians or MAID assessors are having, and they can talk about the shortfalls. If we're going to, I really believe this, I want MAID corrected. I want it to be a much better law than what we have at the present time. C7 was a beginning attempt. Now it's becoming contaminated by the same people that contaminated MAID in the first place. But
yeah, this is, and the legislative process is very difficult. I mean, the Senate's about to look at this next week. Of course, there will be amendments proposed, but they may or may not pass, and the government may or may not do anything about it. it's just not the best way to try and fix a bad piece of legislation, is to add some stuff onto it to try to clarify. We need some clear thinking about this, and we just can't get anybody to agree to that. The first study of this, the government sent off to a group of academics, but they weren't allowed to make recommendations. They were just allowed
they just
to look
studied
at
problems.
Yeah. So then nothing could move forward. I want to ask you a couple of specific things, because the language around this stuff is always interesting. You prefer to say you're seeking advance consent, not an advanced request.
That's right.
Explain that.
Well, an advance request, yes, that could go through, but I have no confirmation that anybody's going to act on it.
Right.
I can file the request. Great.
Yeah.
But I want a confirmation that somebody will act on it. So this is why I wanted advance consent. And you see, this is why we got to get rid of this death in the foreseeable future part of current MAID, and why we have to get rid of the problem that Audrey Fisher had with final confirmation.
Yeah.
But I want a consent from my physician that at certain date, or in my case, I got 8 conditions specified.
Yeah.
That when these things happen, then you'll provide me with MAID. That's my beacon of hope.
Let's go through that. You do. You say you've got 8 conditions here. I've got them in front. Do you want to explain what you've laid out?
Well, I'll try. I haven't got it all memorized.
I've gone through it enough, so I'll help you out.
You can help. Well, my first one is basically when I can no longer communicate anything with my wife, my family, friends. I don't know who comes in the room. I don't know what they're talking about. And this kind of incapacity could vary. Some days it could be terrible, and other days, I might recognize, but that recognition factor will last for a few minutes, and then I don't know.
Yeah. Then
the other thing that comes along is that I see somebody strange in the room, and I become paranoid, become extremely fearful. Well, I know my general reaction to when I become fear, it's not running away. I tend to attack.
Yeah.
That's my military background. I don't know. Yeah. But that's just my nature. I fight back.
I think it's everybody's instinct. Yeah.
So I don't want to fight people when they come in to help me. My PSW is coming in to change my diaper. I don't want to have to fight her.
Yeah.
So, okay. Then there's this issue of imagination.
Hallucinations, all of those things.
Hallucinations. I don't know.
Yeah.
All the strange stuff. Now, I heard, there a few weeks ago, Lisa Raitt.
Yes.
Trying to explain what it was like with her husband with early onset. And that's the major problem. This poor man has got all these imaginations, and he doesn't know what's happening. And he's talking to him in the middle of the night. He's flailing out. He will strike people. Well, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
So I don't want any of that.
I sat with my mother one day, and she, I think she on some level knew who I was. I mean, certainly a relative and somebody that she felt close and comfortable with. And she had been a teacher all her life and taught drama and some sports, all the extracurricular stuff. And she in a very, very lucid way said, well, I've got the girls here from the volleyball team. And I said, well, where, Mom? And she said, well, here. There's no space for them anywhere else. So they brought their sleeping bags and they're on the floor. So sitting in her room, having a very normal conversation with me, she was also seeing a floor filled with young girls sleeping on sleeping bags.
That's right.
It's just, you learn, of course, as somebody who deals with this, you don't argue and you don't say, no, they're not there. You say, oh, that's interesting. And then in a moment, they're gone. But the other side of that is there were days where she seriously resisted, as you said, because of fear. She didn't know who people were.
That's right.
So she reacted that way.
I'll go to the imaginations. Your mom was imagining the girls that she was coaching.
Yeah.
You can imagine other things. You can imagine fearful circumstances.
Exactly.
So, and we go further. One of my conditions there deals with when I can no longer dress myself.
Yeah.
When I can no longer feed myself. When I can no longer shower, clean myself.
Yeah.
And that's a reality, from your mom. She can't do it. Couldn't possibly. So you're entirely dependent upon staff to help you with that.
And your body forgets these things. I'm not sure people understand, but I sat there and fed my mother, not, because her body was forgetting the process of swallowing and what you do with food, something that, of course, we take for granted.
Well, yeah. And what food are you providing her? I describe it in better terms as something like baby's pablum.
Yep.
But it could be last night's leftover dinner that they just put in a blender.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like feeding your mom, but I saw a video of somebody trying to feed a lady with Alzheimer's. And the poor lady was sitting there in the chair with her bib around her. And the feeder had a spoon. Move the spoon, touch the lady's lips, a mouth would pop open.
Mm-hmm.
Then you put the pablum in, then the mouth closes, and you have to try to encourage the lady to swallow it because they've forgotten how to swallow. Certainly can't chew. Yeah. They have to swallow. Then the next, touch the lips with the spoon, up it goes, dump another load in. Well, see, I don't want that.
This is this is your point that you make, that it's not just about intolerable suffering or pain. It is a genuine quality of life. That, to me, is not a definition of living.
Well, sorry, Pam, I'm going to bump in here.
Yeah.
It's not living.
Yeah.
Living is a very constructive, positive interchange with what life has to offer, other people, circumstances, things, or in Gus's case, his motorcycle, or the people down the street. That's living. When you can sit down and talk with people and share ideas. Now, what we're talking about is a deterioration that leads to the point where you're not living, you're not interacting in any kind of constructive sense with the world. You are existing.
Yeah.
You are not living. You're existing. And these people are going to extraordinary lengths to help you exist.
Yeah.
I was reading something in the paper this morning or yesterday, I don't know, recently anyway, where the doctors were arguing about what is death. Mm-hmm. And most of them understand today it's not a measure of when your heart stops.
Right.
It's really a brainwave activity. Your heart is nothing but a pump.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is that this pump, it can stop for 30 seconds. It can stop for 5 minutes. Sometimes it can stop for a day. Then it'll start going again. So generally, I guess, from what I read in the article, coroners wait for evidence of heart stoppage for at least 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So what's death? Death is not your heartbeat. Your heart's a pump. Yeah. Death is up here in your head. Yeah. Your mind. And when your mind is gone or going, I don't want to live.
Yeah.
I don't want to live. Now, other people may choose to do that.
Yep. That's the thing.
I have no problem. Let them choose and if their family and the supports are there for it, by all means, let it go. I don't want to see these people abandoned. This is what's happening right now with COVID. Yep. Why are 80% of the deaths in our
old folks' homes
long-term thing? Why are they dementia people? Well, we're doing the worst thing possible. We're locking them in a room.
Yeah. Absolutely the worst thing possible. So give us your. I was interested when I went on your website. You have a section there, and it's called the Serenity Prayer.
Yeah,
of course, many
that's right.
people will know it. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So here we are as we face this issue once again, politically in our Houses of Parliament. Give us some wisdom. Tell us what we should really be thinking about.
What are we really thinking about? I'm going to throw in a curve here. I learned that serenity. I was an alcoholic, but I understand that serenity prayer is the basis of AAA meetings. So, but anyway, but the point is, as far as I'm concerned, is this matter of choosing life and choosing a death. My life, I've chosen. I've worked 81 years at it. Well, there are things that didn't go so well. I don't worry about those. I've had a wonderful life. But I want to be able to choose death. And the thing that I want to tell people, certainly anybody over 50 years of age, how do you want to die? How do you want to die? Because it's going to be sooner for most people than anything else has ever gone on.
That's the short end of the spectrum there. Yeah.
How do you want to die? And most people, when I confront them with that question, talk to me, well, I want to die easy. Maybe the best way is to go to bed at night and not wake up in the morning. Yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah.
See, this is why we talk about dying with dignity. Yeah. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to upset the world. We don't want to do that. So it's the key issue to me is just that, dying with dignity, and being able to choose a death with some dignity is wonderful, wonderful. I can even extend on that. I've talked to people who want MAID. This is, to me, it's one of the kind of wonderful stories I have. This lady got a hold of me and her Gmail connector was Antler Woman. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking, she was talking about MAID and what she wanted to do and whether she could. So I was providing her with the information. So I asked her, why you have this thing called Antler Woman? Well, she lived out in the country. Yeah. What she loved to do was go deer hunting. So she said, come with me. So I went into her, she had a double garage. She had deer antlers all around the garage hanging up there. But here's what I found most interesting about it. She said, a real advantage about being able to choose when I go is I can have a real celebration of life. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is, she had a big deck on the back. She's going to either get a quarter of venison, or she'll put a pig up. They're going to barbecue. She's going to have her friends and have a few drinks, and they're going to celebrate what her life's been about. Now, to me, that's a true celebration.
Right.
One you can participate in, one you can be part of. You don't have to die the next day. We're not talking about that, but I'm saying here is something that gave me another. It's like Gus talking about a beacon of hope. You can celebrate your life with the people that matter. Yeah. You can choose your death. You can go quietly and easily with some dignity in this world. So that's what matters to me.
It's so, it's a privilege to talk to you. Thank you. I really appreciate you laying this out. I want to make sure that everybody who is involved in this discussion and has some decision-making power truly understands the way you describe it, because you're living it.
I am.
This is your life,
and you see me smiling. I do smile
yes.
a lot. Now, one of the things I get extra information, more than you need. You likely won't even show it.
Come on, bring it on.
In all this decline in my head, there's a little part of your brain that's about the size of your twisted thumb back in here that deals with your empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the first things to go with me. Because now I have a great problem trying to control my feelings. Particularly feelings of sad. I was just, for example, I was speaking to a group of fellows, women in my Rotary Club the other day. Mm-hmm. We were talking about other kinds of problems. And so when I took the chance to thank them for taking the time to encourage me to talk,
right,
and socialize, listen with them. Well, even now I find it difficult to say that because I just about I tear up.
Yeah.
It's that empathy control. But doesn't take anything away from what I have to say, though.
No, it doesn't. And I think that, honestly, that does happen. We see it in older people, obviously, because you kind of wear those emotions closer to the sleeve. But that's why your discussion, your willingness to engage on this is so important, because you are there. You're much closer to it than somebody who's 30 or 40 or 50. You're staring it.
This is not an academic hypothesis.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I read that full report from the Canadian Association of Academies.
Yeah.
That did the study. And yeah, it's mostly supposition and hypotheses.
Yeah. When there was no place for your voice. Yeah.
Yeah. When I look at these built-in precautions and safeguards and MAID, they're all based on supposition, not reality. And I'm real. And there are a lot of people like me.
Absolutely. And one should be able to die with dignity or die proudly when it's no longer possible to live proudly or with dignity. It's a pretty simple proposition in the end.
That's right. And I want to come down to it. It's a medical care thing.
Yeah.
Health care. It's a decision between my physician and myself, just like choosing any kind of medical treatment.
Yeah.
We discuss it. We discuss when, how, and if, and we decide. I can still do that.
Yes, you can. We will be back in touch with you as this debate unfolds in Parliament. I'll be really curious about what you're thinking and what you're saying. I don't want to get you too worked up or angry, because I get that way myself about this, because it's frustrating.
Well, if you read some of the pieces, you see my frustration showing.
Yeah, I do.
But I'll be glad to help, Pam. I'll be glad to help anybody. I've met Senator Chantel Petitclerc through this whole process too.
Yep.
And so I'm willing to do whatever I can.
Okay, consider yourself recruited.
Okay. Done deal.
Thanks so much. Ron Posno talking to us today about MAID and the state of the legislation in this country. Really, really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.